Good afternoon, everybody. Here at the end of July, as peach season is well underway, and in Delaware we have peach orchards all over the state. I wanted to share with you today a recipe for making a homemade peach pie. We crust from scratch, sliced peaches, and then we bake it, and within an hour we have a wonderful treat that can be enjoyed by anybody. So what I wanted to share with you today is, first of all, what we've got here for ingredients. I've got all of my crust making ingredients. Very simple, very straightforward to do a basic pie crust. Then over here you'll see we've got fresh cut peaches. These have ripened for a couple of days in a paper bag, which is the best way to ripen peaches. And then we have all of the ingredients that I'll mix with the peaches to make sure that everything is ready to go. All right, so we'll start here with the basic crust recipe. And what I've got are 3 cups of just standard flour. We put that in. And I've got a rounded teaspoon of salt. So it's a little bit more than a teaspoon, but we sprinkle that in. I want to mix those 2 dry ingredients together because that's the only list of dry ingredients that I'll be using today. As you can see, it's called basic pie crust, and that is why. But it's delicious once it's baked and ready for eating. So the next ingredient that I'm going to add is about 1.5 sticks of butter. Now there are many variations for a pie crust recipe. Some of them call for vegetable shortening. We all call it Crisco. It comes in long tubes. It's white and it looks like lard. I prefer not to use that. I use an all butter recipe, so the crust is strictly made from butter. No vegetable shortening will be added to it. And what you do is you slice up the butter, small pats, what I'm doing now. It's about 1/4 inch wide. The butter's been sitting out for a while, about a half an hour. So it's chilled, but not really hard. Makes it easier not only to slice, but more important, to go ahead and cut it in and mix it in my basic pie crust recipe. What I'll do, about 1.5 sticks, and I'll just very quickly drop it into the dry ingredients. And this is where the first real work comes in. So I will need a second knife. Some people may remember from past videos that I do not have a pastry knife, so I do it the old-fashioned way, just using 2 standard table knives. Melissa is recording for me, so she can keep recording as I cut in the butter. You see that okay, Melissa?
Yep.
I should note while I'm slicing this in, and I'm not the only baker in the house. Melissa loves to make cakes, and I'm usually the pie guy. That has a nice ring to it, the pie guy. Growing up on a farm, we always had fresh vegetables, some of which we grew ourselves, and we would make sure we always had fresh fruits on the table. In fact, growing up, we had 2 very large greenhouses. We grew greenhouse tomatoes. And at the height of the summer, we'd probably be picking a ton or more of tomatoes by hand every single week. We would sell those throughout the state. So growing up on a farm, you get used to having fresh fruits and vegetables around, especially if you live in Delaware. And when you have a lot of fresh fruits, one of the ways to use them is to bake. And so my mom in particular showed me how to make this crust. And pretty much, you can use this crust for any kind of pie. Peach, apple, even pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving.
And quiche.
I said peach.
No, quiche.
What?
Quiche.
Quiche! Oh, Melissa makes quiche. I do not make quiche. I'm not the quiche guy, I'm the pie guy. All right, so as you see me slicing this in, a lot of times in a recipe you'll read that you're supposed to cut in the butter or vegetable shortening into pea-sized lumps. Well, we all know how big peas are. And I could probably slice with these two knives for another hour to get everything into pea-sized lumps. So I'm content just to get it worked in to the dry ingredients enough so that it's mixed thoroughly. And then I can take my spatula and finish mixing it, maybe mash down some of the larger lumps that are still in there. You can't see, but below this counter, my dog Timber is nudging me and poking me.
That's Fletcher, isn't it?
No, it's Timber, because Fletcher's over there. Because she knows when we're making something from scratch that a lot of times right off this counter, there will be crumbs and morsels and tidbits that are perfect for snacking. What she doesn't understand is she's not going to be eating flour, butter, and salt. Now the oven is preheated. We'll be using that in a little while. A lot of times with baking, you want to get your oven preheated while you're mixing everything, so the moment you're ready to bake, the oven is ready to go. All right, so at this point, I think all the dry ingredients and the butter are well mixed. And now I've got 8 tablespoons of water. And so we're going to just pour in the water throughout the mixture. And then I'll continue with the spatula, bringing all of the ingredients together. The final step is to mix it so that we actually have a crust. Or dough that's ready to be rolled out into a crust. Timber, you're not getting any extra snacks? No? I don't get any today. I'm sorry, not now. You can see that the water has the effect of turning everything into a dough. Another way to do this, for people who are really fancy and think I need a little more water, is to use a large KitchenAid mixer, which will fold everything together. But I didn't want to get fancy. Not everybody has a KitchenAid mixer, and I wanted to demonstrate that you can do this with your own 2 hands and some very basic utensils. So now I've probably got about 10 tablespoons of water in there, and it's getting very close. The thing about crust is you want to have that nice balance when it's finished so that you can roll it out, but it's not too doughy. It shouldn't be like Play-Doh. Because ultimately when the crust cooks or bakes, it should be nice and flaky when the pie is done. Or the quiche is finished. Pause there. And now what I'll do is bring the ingredients together by hand, because at the end, when I'm finished, I don't want to handle it too much, because that can impact how flaky it turns out if I handle it too much. Again, don't want it to be like Play-Doh. So I get it so it's well mixed, and I pretty much pull it together so it'll be in a lump. And then what I'll do is I'll put that in the refrigerator for a bit so it can chill. Chilling it for a little bit, cooling it down, helps when I roll it out, so it's not quite as sticky, and it's easier to get it ready for the pie crust tin. So just about like that. Still a little crumbly, which is good. Not too doughy, but sticking together enough so that when I remove it, when cooled, I can break it into 2 lumps for the bottom and the top crust. All right, so what I've got now is the dough, completely mixed, and it's ready to go into the refrigerator. So I'm going to change out my gloves here in a moment. I'll put that in the fridge to get chilled. New pair of gloves. we all know gloves are hard to find right now. So these are Melissa's handy dandy snazzy purple cooking gloves.
They're called I don't want to touch raw meat gloves.
Oh, these are sterile. Kimber, you're not getting mine. I'm sorry. All right, so I'm going to slide over my pastry board, which I've used in the past. And now I'm going to slide over about 10 sliced peaches. These ripened for about 4 days in a nice paper bag. And as they ripen, it makes it easier to remove the skins and then slice them up so I'll be able to put them into the pie. So what I want to do is I want to add a few ingredients so as the peaches bake inside the pie crust, they don't become too liquidy. So that when you slice the pie, it doesn't just expand and slide all over the plate. You want to keep it so it's cohesive, stays together. So what I do is I've got some items here. I have I have some butter that I've melted. I have 1 egg. I have 2 tablespoons of flour. And I have a ½ a cup of sugar. So what I'm going to do is first drop in the egg so I can mix it, kind of whip it up there. You'll see over here I have a 2nd egg set aside. More about that later. I'll add the next liquid ingredient, which is my melted butter. I'll let in the flour, which will help to make the peaches stick together better when they cook. And now I'll add in the sugar. Recipes vary. They can call for anywhere from 2/3 of a cup to a full cup of sugar. These peaches are Delaware peaches, which means they are wonderfully sweet. So I've just added slightly less than ½ of a cup of sugar. What I'm going to do is drizzle that over the peaches like this. Get the rest of that out with another spatula.
Timber's waiting.
Yeah, she's going to wait a long time. You wouldn't like peaches anyway, you know?
Oh, yes, she would. She eats anything.
She's a healthy girl. So you see, I mixed that all in. So that will serve to bring the peaches together, sweeten them up just a little bit more. And as everything bakes inside the crust, it will make it very tasty.
No spices?
You can always add spices if you want. You want me to add some spice?
No, I like it just the way you make it.
Okay. Well, you can always add spices like nutmeg or cinnamon if you wish. We'll go without, but again, you can add something like that to heighten the taste or make it a little bit different. But don't ever put too many spices in because then you lose the essence of the peach flavor. It gets replaced by the various spices. Spice can go a long way in a recipe. All right, so that's nice and well mixed. We'll set that aside. And what we're going to do is we're going to wait about 5 minutes for the pie crust or the dough to get chilled. And we'll pause the video and we'll be back in just a few moments. All right, we've let the dough chill for a little bit. And so you can see I've taken it out and separated it into 2 pieces. 2 and a little bit that fell off. And these will be used to roll out the bottom and the top crust one at a time. So you see I've floured the pastry board a bit. I'm gonna just roll the dough around in the flour. The flour helps to keep the dough from sticking. As I said earlier, when you make fresh dough, it has a tendency with all of the butter in it and the water to want to stick to your board. So this way you keep it free of the board. Once it's rolled out thin enough to transfer to your pie tin, in this case I have a very deep dish pie stone form for my pie. We like very thick pies, and there are so many peaches there that will help to fill it up. Now, I like to use what I call an Amish rolling pin. It's more like a dowel. It's about 1.5 inches at its thickest, and it's tapered on the two ends. And for me, it's a lot easier to handle this kind of a rolling pin rather than the kind where the handles are stationary and the rolling part is fatter and moves independently of the handles. For me, this is a more natural approach to rolling out the crust. As you can see, it's rolling out nicely. We'll pause, flip it over. A little more flour on the bottom. Again, that keeps it from sticking to the pastry board. So we've got to roll it out fairly thin so it will fit in that stone pie crust mold and have enough draped over the sides so you can make your crimped crust on the edges. Turns out our dog Timber, while she would always love snacks, was trying to let me know that she needed to go outside. So it's much quieter in here and I'm not being poked from behind, which was slightly distracting. But I'm sure when she comes back in, she'll smell the pie baking and she'll renew her enthusiasm for snacks. Keep rolling it. You see it gets thinner and it stretches out. You want to be cautious enough that you roll it on different places and locations so that you don't wear a hole in it or stretch it too much in one direction. You generally want to keep it in a circular shape so it's much easier to put it into the crust. And so you get it large enough that you think you're going to have enough to hang over the sides. And if you make a mistake, it's okay. It doesn't matter. If you make it too small, it's okay, because then you can just make the top crust a little wider to compensate. But I've done it enough, and hopefully done it long enough that I can eyeball it to make sure we're going to have enough to fit in the crust form and drape over the side. So Melissa showed me this to transfer it from the pastry board to the formed crust pan. You roll it on your rolling pin, and this kind of pin makes it easier, and then you unroll it just like that, and there's our bottom crust.
Yeah.
So now you want to
Easy peasy.
Yep, very easy. It was a great idea. You tuck it in without poking holes in it. So you see I lift it from the sides, but then push it down inside there, like that. Get it so it sits down in there. Even if you don't get it all the way, that's all right. As it bakes, it will flatten out. So now there's another little trick I'm going to show you. When you do fruit pies especially, or pumpkin pie even in the fall, you have to be careful that the fruit, it's very juicy, a lot of moisture, doesn't go directly into the crust because it can soak in and your bottom crust will never get flaky. And some people might not notice, but I do. And so there's a little trick. Take a small whisk, have another egg here, you just whisk it together. It's good to have gloves on. And then I have a pastry brush. And all I'm going to do is, just like I'm painting it, I'm going to take the egg. You see that, Melissa? Enough? Yeah. I'm going to paint on the inside of the crust. Doesn't matter if you slop it around a little bit, it'll bake right in. And you're thinking, why in the world would Mr. Williams be putting raw egg mixture on the inside of his pie like that? Right? So the answer is that barrier is sort of a waterproof seal. So now, when I slide in my fruit base, whatever it is, whether it's apples, peaches, pumpkins, doesn't matter. Blueberry, strawberry season ended some time ago. But when I do that, you can see all that liquid now is going to have a much more difficult time soaking into the crust. It's actually going to buck up against the butter, and the butter will keep it waterproof. One other addition I want to make, you don't have to do this, but I enjoy doing it, is I'll slice very thin, almost wafer thin slices of butter. Again, this is optional. Now this butter is much harder because as you see, I just took it out of the fridge. And you put it on top of your pie, like that. Doesn't have to be measured, just a little bit. And that buttery flavor, as the pie bakes, will mix in with the pie and give it a more enhanced taste. All right, so now, put some more flour down on the pastry board. And we're ready to take the second pack of dough and roll it out for the top crust. This one may be a little tougher because it's a little smaller, and you may have seen that I was taking pieces and pushing them together, and you can see them. So as I roll it out, you can see it's going to be a little more challenging. So I got to work this one a little more diligently than I did the first one, but that's okay. We'll get there. And if you're a younger person, a student, and you're doing this, of course the oven is hot, so you always want to have an adult supervise. Anything that's hot or sharp. The knives that I used are standard table knives, but they can cut. So make sure you have an adult supervising at all times. All right. And much like the first crust, I want to get this rolled out large enough and thin enough that I can drape it right over the pie and then make my crimped edges all around. That's my favorite part. I love a really thick crust, just like with pizza. I like a big thick crust on the edges. Some people prefer not to have a thick crust on the edges. It's all in a matter of
My favorite
taste.
part.
Yep. Keep rolling it out. It's not as difficult as I thought it would be. I thought I might have some challenges with pieces separating. This one maybe even looks like it's doing, so far, going better than the first one. Cool thing about baking is always surprised. Things don't always go the way you want. Sometimes they go better than the way you want. Sometimes they don't turn out quite the way you want. Baking takes practice, just like anything else. Just like athletics, just like doing schoolwork. Just the way your teachers have learned a lot in the last several months about virtual instruction and how to use technology and packets to make sure that you are still getting information and you're learning about the world around you. It takes them time. And they get better as they do it with practice. And that's something that we all have to remember. We give each other some grace when we make mistakes, because it's very difficult to do anything perfect the very first time. In fact, I don't know of anyone in my life I can say does something perfect the very first time. All right, so now we've got the top crust ready. I'm going to repeat what we did, only I'm going to roll from the other side this time. So it's either way, it doesn't matter, whichever way you want to go. And that is such a cool way to transfer crust. So I've got it here. I want to make sure I have enough draped over that edge. Roll it towards Melissa, and Lauren's sitting there in the background.
Ta-da.
It's not quite ready. So now this is my favorite. Now some people will want to trim that off and make a very thin outside crust. I do not. I do not have leftover crust when I bake. I take it, and what you want to do is you kind of want to pinch those together and you're rolling it under. And this also, sealing it on the edges, helps to prevent juices from flowing. Well, there's a little extra there. I will have some extra. Some of the juices from flowing out of the pie onto, what does Melissa do? She's taking the dough and she's eating it. That's awful. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. This dough is raw. Bad idea. That's a poor demonstration.
Hopefully Melissa does not get $7.
Right. Don't
No,
eat.
it doesn't have eggs in it.
Don't eat raw pie dough. What you can do is you can take little pieces if you have a lot. I've done this sometimes. You can sprinkle cinnamon sugar on it and roll it up the way I did on the rolling pin. And you can bake it right next to the pie and you get like little pastry morsels.
See what you're doing here.
All right, can you see what I'm doing?
Yep.
So right now, my pie looks like the crust is all tucked under. Very well done, I hope. And now what I'm gonna do is crimp it. You can use fancy crimping tools, or you can use 2 fingers and 1 finger, the way I do. And you just go around, doesn't matter if it breaks, and you're going to give your pie what's called fluted edging, or crimping, all around the sides. So when you go to someone's home, or you go to a bakery, and you purchase a pie, they will probably have used an actual tool, and it will look exactly the same all the way around the outside or the circumference of the pie. All right, so I'm coming around, meeting up where I started, and you see I've got that last
Perfect.
left, and you see it's got little broken pieces here and there. But now I have crimped the pie. See, I've still got a little bit of egg left, and I'm going to take a fork, and I like to do this. If I were making an apple pie, I'd put a capital A on it. I'm making a peach pie, and so putting a P on the crust lets people know maybe what kind of pie it is, what would be baked inside a pie during peach season when the pie starts with a P. It's not pumpkin. It's going to be peach. But we also want to have little vents in the top of the pie, so as it bakes, some of the steam and the heat can release. That way it won't try to release on the edges of the pie and lift the edges of the pie up. It can escape through those little vents. And so I like a golden crust. So much the way I did inside the crust, I'm going to put some of, maybe not as much, just a light egg mixture on the top of my crust, like that, just a little bit. You see it's shiny, and I have a massive sweet tooth, so even though I said the peaches are naturally sweet, I'm just gonna sprinkle right on top, just a little sugar on the crust. That's optional, that's what I like to do. And at this point, we now have a peach pie that's ready to bake. The oven is preheated to 375 degrees. I have it on a convection setting, so it heats universally throughout the pie. Not every oven has that. You can just bake it on 400 in a regular oven. And I'm gonna bake it at the 375 for 15 minutes. Then I'm gonna turn it down a few notches, a few degrees, maybe to 350 or less. And I'll bake it for another 45 minutes. So it's an hour baking process. So our plan, it's now 2:30. We're going to show the pre-recorded portion of the video, and it should conclude around 3:30 when it starts at 3. And when it concludes, we'll go back live, and I'll pull the finished pie out of the oven, ready to bake. See you in a little bit. Hi everybody, so in the oven, pie is finished, turn the light on so you can see. Now we're ready to take it out. This is the whole payoff for all of that hard work. Again, if you're doing this as a student, make sure you have an adult supervising. It's very hot in there. You can see I cook it on, or bake it on a cookie sheet, and that serves two purposes. One, it makes it easier to get it out, but secondly, it helps to evenly heat the bottom of the pot. The oven. Grab another
Hi, Danella.
hot pad. Bring it over and put it there to cool. And there is our peach deep
Just gonna
dish.
let everybody get a full view of this wonderful crust. It's my favorite part. Hi, Marcy.
And Timber's gonna get a little piece too, because she helped.
Yeah, Timber's just waiting, taking her little mid-afternoon nap. Don't mind my dirty floor. All right.
Well, good luck making your pie, and remember you can put anything in there that you want. This time of year, there's fresh fruit all over the place. Have a great rest of the summer, everyone, and we will see you at some point or another in the fall. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.